Chapter 36. They went back to the control room. It turned out that the collection of broken pieces Tessa had in her pocket were enough to spring them from their prison cell, tap into an outlet for the whole computer system, schedule the guards to stay away from them, and set an open path to get back to talk to the computer voice. Now Deck was arguing with the computer. "You could have made this a lot easier for us," she scolded, "having us arrested, knocked out, imprisoned." "I needed to be sure you had enough resolve to carry this through," the computer voice said. "I knew Gideon was smart enough to sneak out of his mother's apartment past all the military officials watching him, smart enough to get back into the Waterford City central grid and turn off the lights and cameras in the areas he needed to walk through, smart enough to find a way to fly into the war zone and back again. But what was really driving him? Did he want to make amends more than he wanted to die? Without the war, was he capable of having any higher goals?" "Yes," Gideon said. Oddly, he was looking at Tessa as he spoke. Deck rolled her eyes. Okay. Spare us the morality lessons," Deck said scornfully. "We don't need to hear what you were testing me and Tessa for." Actually, Tessa wouldn't have minded finding that out, but, well, maybe she already knew. Deck was still talking. "Why does it matter what we do?" she asked the computer. "Why do you even need us? If you thought it was best to admit that the whole war was fake, why didn't you and the Westham Central Computer just tell everyone years ago? Why wouldn't you pile a bunch of officials onto an airplane and send them into the war zone to see it all for themselves?" "Because my projections showed that wouldn't work," the voice said, almost a whisper now. "Anything I did on my own, or even with the Westham Computer, all of that would be seen as a malfunction. I would have been shut down instantly, before I had a chance to explain. You kids, you're more believable." Gideon frowned. Even as he smoothed down his hair, on their way to the control room, he'd detoured past a closet with spare uniforms, so he was back in sparkling pristine white and gold. But he still had dirt and blood caked in his hair, and if anything, the bruises on his face had gotten darker. He looked like a hero who hadn't had time to recover from his wounds. "General Kantoff didn't believe us," Gideon growled. "You could tell he didn't even think for a moment about the possibility that we might be telling the truth. The generals are going to be the hardest ones to convince," the computer voice said patiently. "You think you've spent your whole life in the war? They have too. And that's been 40, 50, 60 years of believing lies are true. That's why we have to tell everyone all at once," Tessa said, "the entire country, and Westham too." This was the plan they'd come up with, a broadcast to the entire continent. Tessa found that she remembered enough about TV and radio waves to imagine their news floating out everywhere, into the dark corners of Waterford City, across the empty stretches of the war zone, into the foreign cities of the enemy. And what would happen then? Would people cheer and dance in the streets? Or would they be angry? Would they feel cheated, learning that everything they devoted their lives to for more than 75 years was all a scam? "What if this starts a real war?" Deck asked nervously. "What if Westham starts sending real bombers over here, and we start sending real bombers over there? I mean, if there's not enough water for everyone." "There was always enough water," the voice said scornfully. "People just didn't want to share." The computer made a sound like a sigh. "The Westham system and I won't let anyone start a real fight immediately after your announcement. We'll have everything locked down. All the weapons, all the bombs. But eventually it will be possible to override our controls. You'll have to be very convincing. You'll have to make it so that the majority of the people in each country want peace." "Is that possible?" Tessa wondered. She remembered the little boys back on the dirt pile behind her apartment building, the way they already wanted to fight even at 5 or 6 or 7 years old, the way she herself had wanted to beat them up, had tried to even. What if humans are just going to be at war no matter what? What if it's better if we can all just believe war is going on and nobody gets killed for real? But Deck's parents had been killed by the fake war. Tessa's parents had had their dreams and hopes dashed by a society that poured everything into the war and nothing even into replacing light bulbs. And what about Gideon, Tessa thought. He'd been told his whole life that it's right to kill, that he had to, and yet somehow something deep inside him objected to that. Tessa was thinking so hard that she missed hearing what the others were talking about. "I agree," Deck was saying now, nodding at Gideon. "What?" Tessa asked, looking around bewildered. "What are you agreeing on?" "We've got the whole broadcast system ready to go," Gideon said, stepping back from something that Tessa guessed was an improvised camera. "We just agreed that you should be the first person to talk." "Me?" Tessa said, so surprised that her voice squeaked. "You," Gideon said, "because you're the one who got us here." "Oh no," Tessa wanted to say. "I didn't put the miniature laptop back together. I didn't program any computers. I didn't fly the airplane. I can't even walk around my own city without getting lost." but Gideon stopped her before she could object. "You're the one who had the will to get it here," he said, "the one who always held on to hope." "I didn't always have hope," Tessa wanted to say. "I just always wanted to have hope. And I'm stupid. I'm not good at anything. I'm just a gnat, a flea, a slug." But she wasn't. She was a human, for better or for worse. Gideon was already pointing the camera in her direction. Tessa took a deep breath. She gave a fleeting thought to wondering why she hadn't bothered combing her hair as Gideon had, and then she decided it didn't matter. "Several weeks ago I went to an award ceremony for a hero," Tessa began. "I thought he was a hero because he'd fought in the war. It turned out that wasn't exactly true. It was true, though, that he was a hero." Through the haze of lights directed at her, Tessa saw Gideon jerk back in surprise. She smiled at him, and smiled at everyone in her country, everyone in the enemy's country. "He was a hero," Tessa continued, "because he wanted to find out the truth. He was a hero because, when he thought he'd done something awful, he wanted to do everything in his power to make it right." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "We all have a chance to be heroes now," she said. "We all have to be brave and face the truth." It didn't bother her as much as she would have thought to have the lights and the eye of the camera pointed directly at her. She knew she was talking to some people who would stay cruel no matter what, and to some people who, given half a chance, would discover reserves of courage and kindness. She just didn't know which side would win, which portion of human nature, would outweigh the other. But she had enough hope to keep talking. "Won't you join me and Gideon Thrall and Katerina Pertell in being heroes?" she asked. "Not heroes in the war, heroes in the peace." She imagined the gasps her words would cause, and how the gasps would grow when she and Gideon and Dec explained that everyone on the continent had been living a lie for more than half a century. The way she saw it, the news would be like sunlight bursting into every dark corner of West Elm. She could hear people tugging on the door behind her, someone yelling, "You've got to let us in! You can't do this! Stop!" She ignored them. She told her story, start to finish, everything she'd seen and heard and witnessed and thought. Then Dec and Gideon talked, throwing in technical details that meant nothing to her. They explained how the computers had fooled everyone, why that had been necessary. "But it's not necessary anymore," Gideon said. "We have another chance. We can make a new start. Please, can't we work together?" Tessa realized that the shouting outside the door had stopped. Did that mean people were listening? Did that mean they believed? Dec and Gideon finished up and shut down the camera. Outside, everything was still. "We've got to find out how people are reacting," Tessa whispered. "Can't the computer show us?" The three of them clustered around the miniature laptop, which Gideon hooked into the master computer. And there on the screen, Tessa could see the auditorium back in Waterford City. People had evidently gathered there when the announcement began. Now they were crammed in together, everyone staring toward the front. Their eyes were wide, their mouths hung agape. Nobody was saying a word. "They're in shock," Dec said. "They don't know how to react." Gideon flicked a switch, and the scene changed. A crowd stood by a fence topped with razor wire. Timidly at first, then with greater boldness, the crowd began shoving at the fence. Someone revved up a chainsaw and carved a hole. A teenage boy darted through the hole. The camera zoomed in on his face, and he landed in the dirt on the other side. He looked horrified at what he'd just done, like he just might die from fright. But he didn't. He hit the ground and lay there numbly for a moment. Then, slowly, he stood on wobbly legs. A grin spread across his face. He began waving his arms at everyone still on the other side of the fence, clearly saying, "You climb through too. Come on, it's safe." "People are crossing the border," Gideon whispered. "They're going into the war zone." "They actually believe us?" Tessa asked. "It looks like those people do," Gideon murmured, "but..." He flipped another switch. Now Tessa saw a huge room, so large it was impossible to see from one end to the other. Hundreds, maybe even thousands of young people sat at desks in orderly rows advancing across the room. They all sat the same way, crouched over computers, their hands flying across the controls. "The pilots," Gideon said. "They're still fighting the war. They haven't changed at all." "No," the computer voice spoke for the first time since Tessa and Gideon and Dec had made their announcement. "They just look like they're still fighting. Zoom in on, try row 600, desk 52. Gideon adjusted the view, and the camera zoomed in on a screen toward the back of the room. The screen was filled, not with a battle scene, but with 6 words. "We have to check this out." He just got that message from his buddy in row 989, desk 40, the computer voice said. 50% of the pilots have their computers set on automatic and are trying to verify what the 3 of you just said. No, it's 75% now, 80%, 90%, and oh wow, that was fast. What? Tessa asked. 5 pilots are trying to make contact with someone in the Western military, the voice said. No, 8, 20, 40. Gideon dropped the miniature laptop. His eyes bugged out, but he seemed too stunned even to bend over and pick it up. The war is over, he said. This is the end of everything. Tessa reached out and gently took his hand in hers. No, she corrected. It's the beginning.